All right, today we're jumping into the world of breast pathology to look at two cancers that could not be more different. I mean, they tell completely different stories. One of them basically shouts its presence with these really dramatic, angry symptoms, but the other one, it whispers. It often pretends to be something totally harmless. So we're going to explore what the patient sees and then what's really going on under the microscope.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with our tale of two tumors. Then we'll look at each one, inflammatory and medullary carcinoma, from two different angles. First, what the patient actually experiences, and then what the pathologist sees. And at the end, we'll put them side by side and give you a really simple rule to remember which is which.
You know, when most people think about breast cancer, the first thing that comes to mind is finding a lump. But that's not always the case. It's not the whole story. The body can react in some pretty wild ways. And sometimes, a cancer's biggest tell isn't what it creates, but how it messes with all the tissue around it.
So let's just imagine this for a second. This question really gets to the core of our first subject, inflammatory breast carcinoma, or IBC. This is a cancer that just breaks all the conventional rules of how a cancer is supposed to show up, and figuring out why is absolutely key.
Okay, so let's meet our first character, the aggressor. And believe me, this thing is not subtle. It shows up loud and proud, and it develops fast. It creates this really alarming situation that honestly could easily be mistaken for a simple infection. But what's causing it is way more sinister.
So for the patient, the symptoms are, well, they're dramatic. The breast gets bigger, fast, it feels warm, it looks red, the skin gets all tense and thick. But, and this is so important, it's the thing that often causes delays in diagnosis, there's usually no lump. You can't feel a distinct mass. It's a cancer you see and feel as this overall swelling, not as a single hard knot.
Now, to really get what's causing this crazy appearance, we have to switch gears from the patient's view to the pathologist's view, because under the microscope, you realize this isn't true inflammation at all. The real story is about plumbing, a tiny microscopic blockage that leads to some pretty devastating results.
This right here is the single most important idea for IBC. Dermal lymphatic invasion. What's happening is the cancer cells aren't just sitting in the breast tissue. They're actually breaking off and literally plugging up the lymphatic vessels in the skin. And you can think of those vessels as the body's tiny drainage pipes. It all happens in this really clear chain of events. First, the tumor cells get into those dermal lymphatics. That creates a blockage, kind of like a microscopic logjam. So what happens next? Well, the fluid has nowhere to go, so it backs up, and that causes the swelling we call edema. And it's that backup that makes the breast look red, feel warm, and get swollen, giving the cancer its name. This quote from our source material just nails it. The clinical signs are totally misleading. It looks for all the world like an infection, but it's really just a mechanical problem, a blockage, caused by these invading cancer cells. There might be almost no actual inflammation from the immune system at all.
And you know, this whole mechanism also explains why IBC is so incredibly aggressive. The very thing that's causing the swelling, invading the lymphatic system, is also like a superhighway for the cancer to spread all over the body. Because it gets a head start spreading, the prognosis is, unfortunately, really poor. We're talking 5-year survival rates below 50%.
All right, let's do a complete 180 now and meet our second character, medullary carcinoma, the deceiver. Unlike the shouting aggressor we just met, this cancer is quiet. It shows up in a way that can seem way less threatening. And sometimes, it can even look like a benign or non-cancerous growth. So clinically, a patient with medullary carcinoma feels a lump, a distinct mass. But this mass often has pretty well-defined borders, which makes it feel a lot like a super common benign tumor called a fibroadenoma. Because it's so deceptive, from the outside, it doesn't immediately set off all the alarm bells for a high-grade cancer. But once a biopsy is taken, the deceiver can't hide anymore. So let's switch to the pathologist's view to see how this tumor shows its true colors. Under the microscope, it has a signature that is completely unique and totally different from inflammatory carcinoma.
So you look under the microscope, and what you see are these solid sheets of just large, messy cancer cells. A pathologist would call them anaplastic or poorly differentiated, which is really just a technical way of saying they look super abnormal, you know? They're not making any of the neat, organized structures you'd see in healthy tissue. But the really wild part? It's the body's own reaction. It's like a full-on counterattack. You see this massive army of immune cells, lymphocytes and plasma cells just flooding the area, surrounding the tumor. The body has absolutely recognized the enemy and is going to war.
This tumor also has a very specific molecular profile. It's usually triple negative, which just means it doesn't have the 3 common receptors we often use as targets for therapy. And this is huge. It's found more often in people who have the BRCA1 gene mutation. That's a vital clue, pointing to an inherited risk that has big implications for the patient and their family. But here's the crazy part. Even though the cells look aggressive, that intense immune response can mean the prognosis is actually better than other cancers that look just as bad under the microscope.
Okay, so now that we've properly met our 2 very different characters, let's put them right next to each other. Seeing them together really drives home the fundamental differences in how they act and what exactly defines them.
So let's just run through the key differences one more time. Inflammatory carcinoma, that's your red, swollen breast with no distinct mass, and it's all driven by that lymphatic invasion. Medullary carcinoma, on the other hand, shows up as a lump you can feel, and its defining feature is that massive immune response. One is really a disease of blockage, the other is a story of a battle.
So if you're going to remember one thing, make it this. Here's the simplest way to keep them straight. Think of it like this. A red, angry, swollen breast without a mass. That's got to make you think of inflammatory carcinoma. A distinct lump that's being swarmed by the body's own immune cells? That points straight to medullary carcinoma.
And all of this leaves us with one final, and I think really important question. It really shows you the incredible power of our own immune system. In one cancer, the body's drainage system gets hijacked by the tumor, but in the other, the body's own army rushes in to fight back. Figuring out why that happens is one of the most exciting frontiers in cancer research today. Thanks for joining us.